special fireside chat session on remembering Dr. Paul Terasaki. So first, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Dr. Vadim Juko. I'm an assistant professor here at the Terasaki Institute, and I've been here for about 15 years, and I started my research career under the mentorship of Dr. Terasaki. So it's really an honor for me to be moderating Tuesday's discussion. And so today's discussion is really not just to recall, a great scientist, entrepreneur, and philanthropist, but also to celebrate the enduring impact of Dr. Terasaki's vision, which transformed the field of transplantation, immunology, and biomedical innovation, and much more than that as well. So Dr. Terasaki's work really didn't stop at the laboratory bench, I would say, but it also reshape how we think about science itself as a bridge between, discovery, humanity, purpose, and mission. And today, to help us, explore the many facets of his legacy, I'm honored to be joined by three very distinguished guests who each represented, in my view, a pillar of Dr. Terasaki life work. So with that, I want to introduce Dr. Jerzy Kupiak, who's the director of the Dumont UCLA Transplantation Research Laboratories, the vice chair of basic research, and also the Paul Terasaki Endowed Chair of Surgery. The second guest from the business world is George Ayub, who was the former CEO of One Lambda, the company that Dr. Terasaki founded to translate his discovery into tools that improve life of patients. And last guest, John Kobashigawa, who is the Associate Director of the Cedars-Sinai Heart Institute and the Director of the Advanced Heart Disease Section, Director of the Heart Transplant Program, Professor of Medicine at Cedars-Sinai, and the President of the American Society of Transplant. So first, I would like to thank you all to be here today with us today to discuss and remember Dr. Terasaki's life. So maybe I want to take a minute for maybe each of you to give just a brief introduction of your journey with Dr. Terasaki, just briefly on how you really met him and how how it impacted your life. So maybe we can start with Dr. Kupiak.
Everybody, show first slide, please.
First slide, okay.
So, first of all, I would like to thank you so much for your kind invitation. It is a privilege and honor to be part of such distinguished panel. I need to start on a somewhat personal note because from the very beginning, I have known that Dr. Terasaki is a giant in the field of organ transplantation. My own scientific career started back in 1979 when, as a fresh postdoc fellow from Warsaw, Poland, I joined the lab of Dr. Nicholas Tilney at the Peter Ben Brigham Hospital at Harvard. Indeed, this was the place where the modern era of organ transplantation began in December 1954, where Joe Murray, the future Nobel Prize recipient, performed the first successful clinical kidney transplant between identical twins. The next slide, please. While Harvard was the mecca for transplant scientists and physicians, the West Coast was lagging. Indeed, the UCLA Medical School was established in 1952, while the Department of Surgery in 1955. Here at the bottom of the slide, you can see the entrance to UCLA Medical School circa 1954. It's hard to believe. And on the right is a photo of Dr. Longemeyer, the first surgery chairman, who was so important in the collaboration with Dr. Terasaki. Indeed, Dr. Terasaki earned his bachelor's, master's, and PhD degrees in zoology from UCLA. And in 1956, he joined the Department of Surgery under Dr. Longemeyer, where his research initially focused on chicken skin grafts. He developed an interest in transplant tolerance and spent a year postdoc in London after the future Nobel Prize recipient Peter Murdower, called the father of transplantation. The Terasaki's impact at UCLA, no, please go back. The Terasaki impact at UCLA over his 5-decade career is profound and far-reaching. In his early days, he performed experiments in chick embryos to investigate the mechanism of tolerance. Remember, this was just a few years after his first successful clinical transplant surgery was performed at Harvard. Clearly, Dr. Terasaki had the vision and curiosity. By the way, the allograft that time was called homograft. In his experiments, as shown on this slide, Dr. Terasaki utilized a very clever technique for embryonic cross transfusion. Using this technique, he found a much higher rate of permanent graft acceptance when test grafts were done on chicks at 1 day old compared to those which were older. This seminal, very simple and straightforward studies provided a solid foundation for modern transplant immunology principles. Next slide. Not surprisingly, Dr. Terasaki soon became somewhat bored with chicken experiments and decided to tackle a more practical clinical problem of how to develop a simple and reliable method for organ preservation. At that time, he worked at UCLA with UCLA surgeon Jeffrey Collins, who trained in the Terasaki's lab. Having recognized the limitation of existing preservation techniques, they thought to create a solution that mimicked the intracellular fluid of a kidney. Indeed, the Collins solution prevented the cellular swelling and laid the groundwork for modern organ preservation. On this slide, you can see seminal Collins-Terasaki team papers, including the Lancet from 1969 at the top, documenting that dog kidneys could be safely preserved on ice in their solution for up to 30 hours, or, as shown on the bottom, were alive during the 8,000-mile air transport from the US to Australia, which lasted at that time 30 hours, believe it or not. Next one. Interestingly, despite turning his scientific interest to tissue typing and HLA research in later years, Dr. Terasaki continued his effort to improve organ preservation. As seen here at the top, in 1982, he published a paper on the preservation of kidneys using machine perfusion. This is obviously visionary, as normothermic organ perfusion has become the hottest transplant research topic nowadays. At the bottom, you can see the Nature cover of the European Consortium paper on improving liver function in perfused human livers. Thus, if you read these two papers, it becomes obvious that Dr. Terasaki was envisioning lifeline for donor organs, which 30 years later appears as a title of Nature cover. The other major achievement of Dr. Terasaki during his 50-year tenure at UCLA was the tissue typing test, of course, in 1964. It was crucial for evaluating the compatibility of organ and recipients and has used been in millions of transplants. The test itself had much broader ramification because it has been since used in resolving cases of disputed paternity and linking HLA to various diseases. Next slide. In 1999, after 50 years of groundbreaking research work, Dr. Terasaki retired from UCLA. However, he kept his close ties with the university, and his foundation has been supporting cancer immune therapy and study of humoral immunity and obviously transplantation. Next slide. In 2011, the Terasaki Life Sciences building was inaugurated, making a significant milestone for UCLA. Over the years, the Terasaki Foundation has contributed nearly $60 million to the university, underscoring its commitment to advancing life sciences research and education. Next. Next slide. Yes. And finally, in recognition of his pioneering work in organ transplant, medicine, and philanthropy, in 2012, Dr. Terasaki was awarded the UCLA Medal, which is the university's highest honor. So in my humble opinion, these are just some of the most lasting contributions of Dr. Terasaki to UCLA, which for the last 28 years has been my university as well. Okay, so some personal note. You know, I moved from Harvard to UCLA back in 1997, taking over the transplant research lab in the division of liver transplantation under Dr. Ronald Busuttil. The move from Boston to LA with my 1-month-old daughter, Sophie, who is now the second-year resident at UCLA in anesthesia, was not an easy one. And Dr. Terasaki, in fact, was the first to give me a call and invited me for a coffee at the nearby Starbucks in Westwood before visiting his lab. And I always remember that. And I felt deeply honored and flattered to be appointed as the inaugural Paul Ichiro Terasaki Endowed Chair on Surgery at UCLA in September 2017. This recognition represents an exceptional professional privilege and stands as a pinnacle in my over a 45-year career dedicated to basic and translational transplantation research. The ceremony took place in the Beverly Hills Four Seasons Hotel, here on the right, with the Terasaki clan, my family, and Dr. Busuttil, the chairman of the Department of Surgery at UCLA. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much for sharing that, Dr. Kupiak. Maybe I wanted to ask a following up question on your presentation is also like, so from your perspective, so how did this philosophy also, influence the research at UCLA, and how can it influence the future research or future next generation of immunologists or transplant researchers? How is that philosophy?
Yeah, I cannot comment on how Dr. Terasaki mentored young scientists, because as you heard, I spent most of my postdoc training in transplantation research at Harvard, where I spent 18 years. However, as a true scientist, his uncompromising devotion to honesty in research was legendary. And here I have to quote one event in the early 70s, which I read about from Gerhard Oppel's presentation, that in the early 70s, Terasaki reported some of his negative and unexpected clinical data, which soon led to the NIH funding being cancelled to his research. However, this report was based on a limited testing cohort, which didn't reach statistical significance. However, Dr. Terasaki felt obliged to report this finding at the conference. And this may not always be the case nowadays, while we are all chasing impact factors, age indexes, and historically limited research resources are in play. And obviously, we all know that Dr. Terasaki trained scores of basic translational and clinical transplant scientists and physicians who later became leaders in their respective fields, not just in the US, but all over the world. What was the most important, and what I remember in Terasaki as a scientist, was the curiosity was what driving force in his scientific endeavors, that's for sure. And he also truly and deeply believed in the collaboration between the scientists, which is, I think, even more critical nowadays when we work in very narrow channels. And collaboration is obviously very, very important for mutual success. And at the end, let me say that I checked Scopus, and Dr. Terasaki has published, according to Scopus, 1,007 papers, okay, which were cited close to 50,000 times, which is outrageous by other scientists. And his H index is 98, which is the highest tier of achievement. So his index was 98. And for the most fields, an H index of about 40, which is less than half, is considered to be outstanding. So this is Terasaki.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. Any other additional maybe insight, Dr. Podvashiovidawa, or you want to share on that philosophy and the academic aspect of Terasaki?
Well, I mean, we've known each other for most of those years. I was just lucky that I spent my first 18 years at Harvard because, again, with Dr. Terasaki being such a prominent figure in transplantation on the West Coast, he kept close relations with Harvard folks related to transplantation. I was lucky to start my career with Franny Moore, who was the driving force of transplantation at the Brigham. So, through those big guys, I was able to get know Dr. Terasaki. But what I remember, how humble he always was and how approachable and how friendly, and this will remain with me for the rest of my life, that's for sure.
All right, great. Thank you. Any other thing? So maybe we can then switch to the next part of the talk, which I think is a good transition because of the academic part, which also led to his entrepreneurial part of his life. And with that, I think maybe Georgia, maybe you can start with how did Dr. Terasaki really transition from academic innovation to entrepreneurship?
Yeah, no, definitely. Marim, I'll let you definitely ask questions. So with this one, before I get into this, as you said, just to talk about myself and how I met Terasaki, I started with Dr. Terasaki in 1974 as a technician while I was a student at UCLA. And I got very interested in the research part of it. So I kind of focused in that area and moved forward with research where I've, with his help and the work at UCLA, I was able to publish, close to 20 publication before I started getting interested in the business part of it. And that's 11 years later. And that's when I got my MBA. I moved into getting an MBA and starting putting a plan for One Lambda, which definitely Terasaki has helped tremendously, and said let's move forward with it. So with that, let me answer the question, which is really the transition that Terasaki had from academic innovation to entrepreneurship. And it all started in 1964, after Paul introduced the microcytotoxicity test as we all know it. This HLA assay soon became the world standard for testing for HLA antigens and matching recipients and donors in kidney transplantation. So for 15 years, his laboratory, which is under his direction, distributed HLA tissue typing trays to transplant centers around the world. And I was very much part of that. And in 1980, we all know where the FDA came in and they regulated the field of HLA. Thus, this allowed the commercial companies to develop and distribute HLA reagents. After this, UCLA had to cease the production of the trays at the lab. So Paul really, couldn't stop there because it's his mission will stop. So in 1983, One Lambda was founded, and that was in January 27. They ceased the production in 83, and in January 27, 84, we founded One Lambda. And, his objective was to fulfill his vision and create a full-service HLA company that would be able to produce, manufacture, and support the highest quality product in HLA testing. So on April 1st, 1984, One Lambda officially opened for business in West Los Angeles. And Paul, so this is like a 1-year anniversary for our company, which was like 16 employees by that time. And so in the beginning, Paul assembled a team of 6 former technicians from UCLA who, despite having limited business experience, they were experts in the HLA testing. So this blend of scientific expertise and entrepreneurial spirit laid the groundwork for what One Lambda became 29 years later. So over the next 29 years, One Lambda grew as the leader in the field, providing HLA testing products and services significantly impacting the field of transplantation. And for the next slide, you see where One Lambda, at the end, finished with over 450 employees in there. So in summary, Dr. Terasaki's transition from academia to entrepreneurship exemplified how scientific innovation can lead to entrepreneurial ventures that enhance patient care and transform industries. So that really should answer the question that you had for me in there.
All right, good. All right, yes. So then let's go on to the second question I had there was, so what were his guiding principle in founding One Lambda, and how did they differ from traditional biotech culture, and really how One Lambda was different than other companies?
Those are really important. This is the essence of Terasaki's vision itself. And because throughout his career, Dr. Terasaki had a simple vision and long life mission, and that is to advance solid organ transplant and improve patient survival. His vision and approach set him apart from the traditional biotech companies and the culture in several significant ways. So let me just mention a few of them. It all started at his UCLA laboratory, which became fully equipped with his innovations of devices and automation that were developed by himself, by his vision and his own engineers. He worked on standardizing the reagents. He worked with the companies to develop pipettes and clickers that deliver the exact volume per test, which is the 1,000 microliter, which is the One Lambda, the name of the company that we had. All of these and more were developed during his first 15 years at UCLA. But starting at One Lambda, it was a continuation of his life mission, but which gave him something that UCLA could not offer at the time, and that is the freedom to follow his dreams. So with that, Paul was patient-centric focus. He directed the company to develop automation and improve the tissue typing product that included raw materials from different parts of the world, with the aim as to include specificities representing all different races. We worked on automation, which became available to all laboratories to purchase, which helped standardize the test and perform a much higher volume than ever possible. He also emphasized academic roots versus corporate focus. He expanded his teaching concept that started at UCLA, with limited workshops, to having One Lambda set up local workshops worldwide to teach methodology and showcase the One Lambda product. We also added a US and European annual workshop. These were usually done in a relaxing atmosphere, such as Hawaii, Palm Springs, many exotic areas and European locations. But at these workshops, there were over 100 researchers and clinicians that were invited to discuss their current research. This relaxing, venue encouraged a good discussion. It helped One Lambda understand the direction of the industry but it also allowed Dr. Terasaki the opportunity to introduce his ideas for new projects, asking those people to work on this project if they want to be invited the year after. I mean, it was amazing. It was a genius way of getting your answers in such a short time. But that's Paul, and that's what he always does. And then, he was deeply rooted in the real world of application. He aimed to address immediate challenges faced by transplant patients, such as organ rejection. And through innovative solutions like the single antigen product using recombinant DNA, and those are single HLA antigen detecting a specific antibody that were put on the beads. So rather than wait for us to finalize the product and get the FDA approval, he took our raw materials and started a 4-year study of following thousands of transplanted patients with over 100 centers, hoping to detect the donor-specific antibody as the cause of organ rejection. So his work for 4 short years would have taken, I would say, 100 centers and a decade. It would have taken him a decade to do that and millions of dollars to finish such project. But Dr. Asaki, with his capability and using the various workshops provided by One Lambda and its distributors, he presented his findings worldwide, and he was able to prove his long-awaited humoral theory. With this work, he, convinced the global transplant community to begin looking for antibodies after transplant. So the millions that were spent on this project in such a short time, I mean, it would never have been possible otherwise. But this commitment to a clear mission and purpose is sometimes overshadowed in traditional biotech, where profit, motives sometimes lead to deviation from original goals. But I could tell you, One Lambda never deviated from its focus of continuing Terasaki's early objective. So in summary, I would say that Dr. Terasaki's guiding principles in founding One Lambda were centered on patient care, quality, and collaboration, setting him apart from the more traditional profit-driven biotech culture. So his legacy continues to influence the field of organ transplant and serves as an example of how dedication to a mission can lead to a meaningful advancement in the healthcare.
All right, great, thank you. And so I think to follow up a little bit on that, and which you touched on a little bit, is really, so how did he really build a team and a culture, that balance science and ethics to really have a successful company, but also really having an impact in the transplant community?
Yeah, I mean, he did that very much through like several key practices and principles. Let me mention a few, like a recognition of potential. We all know about Paul Terasaki as the scientist and pioneer for HLA testing and transplantation. But what always inspired me about Dr. Terasaki was his love for innovation and his vision for the future. His inventions throughout the years contributed significantly to shaping the field of HLA as we know it today. Paul also never ceased to recognize the great potential in people who had a similar passion to innovate and improve the field of HLA. He provided them with the resources to make the most of their potential, and I myself am privileged and proud to be one of those people. A second principle was engaging a family atmosphere. It's the key to One Lambda success, which was Dr. Terasaki's influence on emphasizing the importance of a family environment in the workplace. Families were always invited to yearly events, including picnics, cruises, Disneyland, like weekend at Disneyland, a yearly Christmas event. Especially, that event where he wears his Santa's hat and Santa's claws and loves to deliver bonus checks. He also loved the idea of potlucks, where he could talk to his employees and learn about their families. Paul is amazing. He really cared sincerely about everyone. Another principle was his employee loyalty and appreciation. For Paul, loyalty was everything. But loyalty also had to be earned, and it was his most important and appreciated characteristic. He was always proud of the fact that the company had little to no turnover. And as always, it's like as a way to show his gratitude, he awarded employees for their 10, 15, and 20 years of work at One Lambda. His generous rewards for employees' milestones demonstrated his gratitude and commitment to their well-being. Celebrating anniversary with significant rewards reinforced a positive culture where employees felt that their contribution were really recognized and valued. He instilled in his team the importance of conducting research and innovation responsibly. He had, research department of over 100 people, and he ensured that their work benefited patients and the broader community. In summary, really Paul's approach to building a team and culture was characterized by recognition, appreciation, collaboration, family environment, and a strong ethical framework, all of which contributed to the success and stability of One Lambda in the field of HLA and transplantation.
Great. Thank you very much, George, for all this insight and on his entrepreneurial aspect. And I think this is a good transition to go towards what you mentioned with regards of community, because I think, Dr. Terasaki, of course, was really a big community person. And I think in that sense, Dr. Kobashigawa, maybe you can talk a little bit about how he was involved in the community, and particularly I want to share the next slide, which I think this also kind of embodies how he was really a big member of the Japanese American community and how he contributed to that. So please, can you add a little bit, and we'll go to the transplant community also.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Vidam. I grew up in Los Angeles. I'm one of the few native Angelenos here. I grew up in the Japanese American community. And the Terasaki family, as you might imagine, was a major movement in the community itself, supporting many of the community activities, including cultural, as well as the church, as well as the National Japanese American National Museum. These were all very integral parts of the community, and you might imagine Dr. Terasaki and his family kept that all together as well. Why don't I go on and talk about Dr. Terasaki and how the community was led as well. And what you see here is part of the Japan, the U.S.-Japan Council. And Dr. Terasaki was actually awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award by the U.S.-Japan Council for putting together relationships amongst not only business people, but also in terms of the people themselves and the culture between Japanese Americans and the Japan groups as well. So why don't we go on into my talk, which I really wanted to talk about as well, his part of his early life and his early values. Dr. Terasaki was born in 1929 and of Japanese American heritage. As you may know, the war broke out in World War II, and the Japanese Americans were interned, and they were forced to move to these relocation centers. So Dr. Terasaki, along with his two younger brothers, his aunt, mother, and father, were moved to Gila River relocation camp in just south of Phoenix in Arizona. And there he stayed for about 3 years, and he was only 12 years old at that time. Now, you might imagine just being in an area in a one-room barrack with all his relatives, he had to have a lot of resilience. He developed a lot of empathy for people that were underserved as well, and service to not only the family, but also to the community. So I truly believe that that's truly was instrumental in his values as he was growing up. Now, right after the war ended, his family moved to Chicago, and Dr. Terasaki finished his high school education at that point in time, started college, and then the family moved back to Los Angeles, where he began his UCLA career. And you've heard from Dr. Kubiak and George Ayub that he did well. He did more than well in terms of his career. Let me move on to the next slide. So the question is, why does his work matter to the solid organ transplant field? Well, he did many things. He reduced graft rejection, improved survival, standardized practices across laboratories and hospitals. And his philanthropy seeded training, infrastructure, and outreach to the community. And how did he actually do all of this? Well, let's go back in time. In the next slide, to the pre-Terasaki era. And at that time, transplantation was just starting. I started heart transplantation back in the early 1980s. And at that time, rejection was a big issue. In fact, all of our patients in heart transplantation had rejection. If they didn't, we were pleasantly surprised. But through the work of Dr. Terasaki in terms of matching, in terms of understanding the humoral aspect of rejection, now we're able to decrease rejection from literally 100% down to 5%. You know, quite an achievement over these decades, if you might say. But at that time, there was limited compatibility testing in terms of not knowing the cross-matching, et cetera. And so there was a need for reliable, scalable methods. And so Dr. Terasaki went on to have several breakthroughs. There were three in particular, and I think we basically, my colleagues have talked about that, so I'll go quickly through these. The mycotoxicity test, basically identifying the human leukocyte antigen, HLA typing, the immune aspect of transplantation. And this was very important, obviously, for matching and for detecting antibodies against these antigens where you might have hyperacute rejection. Next slide. This is the HLA molecule itself, and Dr. Terasaki really got down into the weeds here, identifying the classes of these antigens. And the community itself would actually proceed on to actually doing more molecular typing for these HLA antigens as well. But he set the foundation for molecular typing, if you will. The next breakthrough was very important, and that was the cross-match in antibody detection. And this is where we actually had problems. Now, when I started transplantation in heart transplant, I remember my surgeon, Dr. Hillel-Lax, calling me down and saying, wow, the heart has turned stone black in the OR. And, you know, we realized at that time that this was, you know, hyperacute rejection. This was antibodies that we had just missed. And the patient did not survive. But, you know, when we looked at the autopsy, indeed, there was antibody-mediated rejection. And this is where, indeed, his complement-dependent cytotoxicity cross-match really came into play to prevent further episodes of this hyperacute rejection. We learned a lot just from that one episode, and believe you me, we never crossed any antibodies again at that point in time. And you can see from the diagram to the right, you know, if your recipient had antibodies and you had two donor options, if a donor had those antigens where those antibodies were against, we did the cross-match as Dr. Terasaki had laid out, and you would see cell killing. Yeah, that's hyperacute rejection, if you will. So we would turn down that donor. And the next donor, number 2 here, you see there was no interaction at all. And that's what the cross-match was all about. Next slide. And indeed, you know, he presented this data in the New England Journal of Medicine. And this was in 1969, truly demonstrating that the positive cross-match really had a great impact on transplantation at that time. And in essence, he saved many lives. Next slide. And so he built this large tissue typing laboratory at UCLA, you know, has been discussed, and basically had a training hub there, quality assurance, and did a lot of reference resources. He was a mentor for pipelines across not only the United States, but around the world as well. And this was all done at UCLA. So what he actually did as well was he set up this registry, you know, of kidney transplantation. And this way he could do large-scale analyses connecting HLA antibodies to survival, cross-match data to survival. And this was, of course, very important to tell the community which way was the safest way to go for transplantation. And this registry actually morphed into the UNOS, United Network of Organ Sharing Registry itself. So it got to be even something bigger across national lines. And in fact, it actually led to the allocation schemes that were very important as to how organs would be allocated in the United States. I just show you this one slide here in the very bottom here that just showed his comparisons of patients who had antibodies that were desensitized. And yes, they had better outcome compared to those on dialysis or transplant on dialysis alone. So indeed, you know, his work led to saving of many lives in the community as well. All right, the next slide, please. And so then, as George pointed out, he began his company, One Lambda. He was told from UCLA that he could take this out to the community. And he was much of an entrepreneur as well as a scientist as well. Commercialized HLA reagents, panels, software, proficiency testing, making sure that there was standardization, not only nationally, but across the globe as well. Next slide. And as you can see here, he had global representation in many different countries in the world. And indeed, you might imagine everything was coming back to the mothership at One Lambda in terms of all the testing that would be done. And this had a great impact on patient care. Next slide. And there was a decrease in fewer cancellations, fewer crises, predictable matching, better organ utilization, fewer hyperacute events, smoother coordination. Basically, he saved many lives, not only in kidney transplantation, but as you can see here, in lung, heart, kidney, pancreas transplantation as well. So it really was across the board. He had a great influence among many of us in the transplant field in general. And HLA was not only with transplantation, next slide, it was actually used in many areas. And Dr. Kubiak did talk about paternity. That, yes, it was used at that point in time too, to see who was a real father here for that child. But you can see here HLA disease associations with autoimmunity, drug hypersensitivity. Yeah, they saw it in cancer, cardiovascular disease, chronic respiratory disease, and diabetes mellitus as well. And that led to population genetics and, in fact, population medicine foundations for customized care. And, you might imagine this is where all this is leading to as well, particularly with artificial intelligence being here and already past the horizon. Now, Dr. Terasaki was also interested in education, mentorship, and workforce development. You can see here, he was in India at this point in time. He really brought through transplantation, not only in the United States, but across the world in order for many others to save lives as well. Next slide. And so now we turn to philanthropy in action, and that's what Dr. Terasaki and his family were all about as well. Seed funding for novel translational ideas and young investigators, community-facing education, outreach programs, collaboration with UCLA and global transplant networks. Now, I was one of those young investigators at that time, back in the early 1990s, late 1980s. I had discovered a connection of statins. Statins actually not only lowering cholesterol, but actually having an immunomodulatory effect, along with cyclosporin at that time. And I discovered that there was a connection maybe with natural killer cells, that the statins would actually decrease the activity of natural killer cells in terms of rejection. And so I went to Dr. Terasaki at that point in time. I said, Dr. Terasaki, can you help me? Can you find a way that we can prove that it's the natural killer cells that are being suppressed by the statins? So he said, sure. He developed this assay by which we could detect the immunoactivity of the natural killer cells. And indeed, when we looked at our patients in heart transplant who were on statins, we found that we had knocked out natural killer cells by as much as 55%. Quite striking for a cholesterol-lowering medication that also had immunomodulatory effects. Well, we published that in the New England Journal. And I'm sure that the only reason I got in there was because of Dr. Terasaki being one of the co-authors of this paper. But you might imagine he really spread his wings, not only in kidney transplantation to my field in heart transplantation as well. And he also instilled into me the fact that antibodies were the issue. And that's been my strength and my interest because of Dr. Terasaki and his mentorship for me in terms of opening the door to antibodies and how we might be able to deal with these antibodies as well. Next slide. He also was very important in the community in terms of Asian American focus. He advanced education, culture, health equity for Asian Americans, educational support in terms of scholarships, fellowships, mentorship for Asian American students in science and medicine. Community institutions, as I mentioned, he put and back to many of the wings of the Japanese American National Museum. It is in downtown Los Angeles, right inside Little Tokyo. And what he has there too is remembrance of the community activities, remembrance of the internment camps. And that is something that is very much important in terms of Japanese Americans who were national who were Americans, who had citizenships in America, and they were being placed into these internment camps. So this is truly a remembrance of not having this happen again. And that's why it's so important for Dr. Terasaki to have, this backing of the Japanese American community and the museums and also cultural activities as well. And as I mentioned, also, he had cultural bridges, the US-Japan exchanges, university cultural partnerships that strengthened cross-cultural understanding. And as I mentioned, yes, he did win and was awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award by the US-Japan Consul as well. Next slide. So how do we measure his outcomes? By the numbers. Millions of transplants benefits from his improved matching, his standardization methods in dozens of countries, and thousands trained via his laboratory, workshop supported programs. Now, at the end of the day, what is really important about everything that Dr. Terasaki did? Next slide. Well, this is what is important.
Yeah. Oh, it's the last one here.
Yeah, it's the last slide.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is what's important. This is about the human stories, about patients that we serve, patient recovery, quality of life. Nowhere in medicine do you take patients who are so ill, so sick, whether it's heart, kidney, liver, lung, that have one foot in the grave. They get a transplant and they walk out the front door with their family arm in arm. And also, you might imagine it affected nurse coordinators, surgeons, everybody alike. And at the end of the day, this is what it was all about. Final slide, next slide. And I just summarize here what he's done. Innovations, data-driven guidelines, institution and philanthropy. And here's my last slide, which I just wanted to put together Dr. Terasaki. Despite his inauspicious childhood, Dr. Terasaki went out to achieve enormous success as a pioneer in transplant medicine, a mentor to countless health professionals, and a dedicated benefactor to numerous academic, social service, and community organizations. He passed away in January 25, 2016, at the age of 86. Now, his legacy continues to inspire generations to come, and he will be remembered with deep respect and admiration for his groundbreaking contributions, the lives he touched, and the community that he played a great role in. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kawashigawa, for this, thorough explanation of the impact of Dr. Terasaki, not only in transplant community, but really far beyond. So now I think I want to take a moment to, reflect a little bit about all this discussion and maybe ask each of you guys what, if Dr. Terasaki was still with us today and seeing how far the field has come, what do you think would excite him most? Would it be still antibodies or maybe some other fields in transplantation or maybe something even beyond transplantation? Yeah, so maybe, I don't know, maybe Dr. Kupiak, do you want to start with that?
Well, I think that Dr. Terasaki would be most excited nowadays with the enormous progress we can see in the field of xenotransplantation, which is the organ transplantation between different species. And I used to say that xeno has a great future and always will, but I do change my idea as well. And I think that this being accomplished by abolishing the humoral immunity by genetically manipulating the donor organ, which Dr. Terasaki long thought to be the key for improving clinical outcomes, he would really like it. And this again proves his long-lasting effect on our field. Another, which I think which he would certainly follow the area, is the ex vivo organ perfusion, which he actually pioneered in the early 80s and is now on a brink of expanding the donor pool for life-saving transplant surgeries. So I think I think that those two areas would be most exciting for him nowadays.
All right, great. Thank you. What about you, George? What do you think?
Well, I mean, I look at it from Terasaki, the businessman, and I would say machine learning and AI. I mean, the use of artificial intelligence in predicting organ compatibility and optimizing donor recipient matching, monitoring transplant rejection, that's what he's after, is the vision of improving post-transplant outcomes. So he would put a lot of efforts in that area.
All right. So would it be really more technology, like software or hardware? Would you think?
It would be a lot of the software. A lot of the software
All
that
right.
I mean, he always loved playing with that in that area.
All right, great. What about you, Dr. Kobashigawa? What's your position?
Dr. Terasaki was always, proponent of the antibody world here. And, in the very beginning, there was a lot of pushback in terms of whether antibodies truly had a role in transplantation. And he persevered. And, we would ask him, well, why don't we see antibodies that are circulating when we see rejection on the biopsy? He says, well, simply, it's all adhered to the graft itself. So that's why you don't detect it on the periphery. And as it turns out, he was absolutely right. Now with the new technologies, we can use mRNA transcripts to actually look at the biopsy and see what are the mechanisms that are occurring, in the biopsy itself. But I think what's really important is what Dr. Kupiec has pointed out, and that's xenotransplantation. We are on the cusp of really breakthroughs in xenotransplantation. A lot of the anti-rejection medications are predicated on a lot of the work that he had done in terms of antibodies. So, we are using co-stimulation blockade right now, and that is the basis for the xenotransplantation. I sit on the Immunosuppressive Council for xenotransplantation, and we're getting close in terms of really knocking this down. In kidney, is particularly more so than in heart. We've done 3 pig hearts to humans, but yet still have the big issue with blocking the humoral response. Again, this is work that Dr. Terasaki had pioneered, and we're trying to use some of his ideas too in terms of how can we block the mechanistic aspect of the humoral response. There are a lot of issues that we can use in terms of complement blockade, in addition to co-stimulation blockade, and some of the newer agents that can knock out, many of these B cells, plasma cells, et cetera, down the line. So more to come on that, on the shoulders of great pioneers like Dr. Terasaki.
All right, great insight. So maybe I can add also from my side, from the Terasaki Institute side, also a point that maybe you've not mentioned, and I think maybe it's a good point for you guys to also think, is also bioprinting maybe organ, and not having the need of really a xenotransplant, but maybe right away engineering a full organ. And I know at the institute that's part of the things that we're trying to achieve in the long run. Well, definitely still work to do, but still motivated by Dr. Terasaki's mission to help patient in the long run. So with that, maybe a last question that I wanted to also ask you. So maybe if you could describe Dr. Legacy in one word, what would it be? So after, also maybe the legacy, but also what is the memory that you have? Maybe start with the memory, then legacy. How can you describe that in just a couple of words? So maybe Dr. Kupiec, you
I cannot simply describe Dr. Terasaki's legacy in one word. It's impossible. I need to use at least 2, okay? First is transformative, because it has lasting impact all over the world. And the second, which I think about, is, of course, innovative, because it introduced new outside the box ideas, which at that time were actually against the wind. And the way of thinking which were pushing boundaries at that time, and they are still pushing, as we heard. And he would challenge us based on his studies from chicken to saving lives, human lives, that what is important is an impactful research from bench, which is necessary, but to the bedside. So I think this is what we all learned, and I think what I am teaching my younger colleagues as a Terasaki professor, which I am very, very proud of. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kupiec. What about you, George?
I agree with Professor Kupiec. I mean, it's not easy to describe him in one word. But if I really have to put it in just one word, which I know, I mean, I've been with him, I worked with him for so long, I would say he is a visionary. He really have seen it all. and he was far ahead of any of his league around him.
All right, thank you. And last but not least, what about you, Dr. Kubashigawa?
I would say that he was a incredible mentor. He has left a legacy of many trainees, many colleagues that have carried on his mission. And there are many missions here as well. So, and it's not only missions in terms of his science, but also in terms of being human and supporting community as well. And, that's not always, present in everyone. And not only did he have a great vision for science, but he also had a great vision for the community as well. He will be remembered in that aspect as well as his science as well.
All right, great. Thank you very much. So with that, really, thank you very much for all that great insight, great discussion, and really on behalf of the Terasaki Institute and also all of who carry his legacy forward, really, I want to thank our panelists, so Dr. Kupiak, Dr. Ayub, and Dr. Kubashigawa, for really those moving, reflection and memories about Dr. Terasaki. And I really want to finish with saying that Dr. Terasaki taught us that the boundaries between science, medicine, and humanity really are not barriers; they're just bridges. And really, he showed us that single discoveries really guided by community and empathy can really at the end reshape the world. And as we continue to work in research or patient care, innovation, and community. We all must carry his vision forward that science is best when it serves humanity. And so, really, with that, again, thank you everyone for joining this very exciting talk to remember Dr. Terasaki, who will still, stay with us forever. So with that, really, thank you again, all the audience, the panelists, and the Terasaki Institute for preparing this session.
Thank you. Thank you, Vadim.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.